When Umang Vohra took over as the global CEO and managing director of Cipla, he had quite the task ahead of him. The task at hand was to straddle the deep altruistic legacy of the company, its image of a Swadeshi Robin Hood on one hand, with sharp business decisions that would bring about a much needed improvement in its margins and profitability. Now, established in 1935, Cipla, an acronym for Chemical, Industrial and Pharmaceutical Laboratories, has had a remarkable history.
Friends, I represent the third world. I represent the needs and aspirations of the third world. I represent the capabilities of the third world.
A history marked by the vigor of its patriarch Yusuf Hamid, who, with support from political leaders of the day, including Indira Gandhi, stood up to the big global voice of the pharma industry then to challenge their patent strongholds. A history marked by game-changing innovations in reverse engineering generic drugs. And a history marked, most critically, by taking medicine and healthcare to corners of the world which needed them badly but didn't always have access to them, like drugs for millions of AIDS patients in Africa.
We all have a responsibility to alleviate the suffering of millions of our fellow men who are afflicted with HIV and AIDS.
Now, while Cipla was somewhat of a subject of national pride, what it was not was a case study in margins and profitability. And Umang Vohra was tasked with rewriting that part of its history. He joined the company in October 2015 as its chief financial officer, fresh from heading the North American business at Dr. Reddy's, a company which is actually often called a breeding ground for some of the best talent in the Indian pharma industry. Umang Vohra was no different. Between Jan and August 2016, he was given the role of the Global Chief Operating Officer of Cipla, and in September 2016, he took over as its MD and GCEO. And from then, started the transformation of this company to a lean, mean, global pharma giant with a narrower focus and slate, a sharp eye on the US, and an unwavering focus on margins and profitability. The month Umang Vohra took over as Cipla's chief, the company's share price was hovering around 600 rupees. When I checked the exchanges just before starting this interview, it was above 1471 rupees, an almost 2.5 times rise in 7 years. In the same period, the company's EBITDA margins have literally doubled to 28%, and net profit has surged more than fourfold from 1,000 odd crore rupees in FY17 to over 4,100 crore rupees in FY24. So how did Umang Vohra achieve it? That is part of what we discuss today. We also talk about where the pharma industry stands and how the massive global upheaval and geopolitical changes, especially in the US, is influencing it. We talk about the latest innovations in the pharma industry and at Cipla. And we talk about probable acquisitions. We talk about tech in pharma and the advent of AI in the sector. And of course, most importantly, we try to peek into where Umang sees the company 5 to 10 years from now. I'm joined by my colleague, ET's pharma guru Vikas Dandekar, in this very special corner of his conversation. It's Tuesday, the 18th of February. I'm Anirban Chowdhury. This is the Morning Brief. Umang Vohra, very warm welcome to this very special corner of his conversation in the Morning Brief.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me with you today.
Right. I'd like to start by taking you to an interview, I think just 2 or 3 months after you had taken over as GCEO. And you had mentioned a few focus areas and a few areas of change. So you had spoken about expanding in legacy markets, but also going to every developed pharma market possible in the world, especially the US. You had spoken about developing products and investing in R&D for yourselves, for Cipla. So a lot of it has been achieved, of course. For example, you've gotten out of segments like animal care, etc. The US story is there for everyone to see. In fact, your revenue chunk from US is now around 27% versus about 18% when you had joined. Tell me a little bit about the journey, maybe 3 points, 3 takeaways from the journey which helped you turn around the company and rechart its story, and if there is a new list of focus areas now.
So thank you, and thank you for reminding me about the points that we had discussed then. I'm glad to say that we've focused on at least 70-80% of them and have got them going the right way. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that this is a business that is so noble in its purpose, that what was most exemplifying to see was that the values of this company and the focus that we brought in terms of caring for life, that stayed very much true to our heart, right? That's how the founders had intended for this business to be. And irrespective of our problems and the challenges we had in the market, that stayed true to what we did. So I'm deeply happy about that. I'm glad that we became more recognized as a company that sells on its own. And I'm glad that our metrics improved the way they did.
Absolutely.
And I think what I'm most proud about was the fact that Cipla had such a beautiful legacy of respiratory devices. And today we are the second largest seller of inhalers across the world, right? I think the first lot belongs to GSK. And who knows, maybe over a period of a few more years, we could be the largest seller of inhalers worldwide. The future is going to be about innovation. The future is about anticipating what could be conditions of medical science that we could bring, make more affordable, or tweak, or process, or make it better for several categories of patients that we work with. In the areas, again, of respiratory, in the areas of obesity, mental health, and within mental health, movement disorders, in the areas of bringing antimicrobial research so that we can continue to be that crusader in crisis. And finally, just making that whole continuum of wellness. That is our stated objective going forward. And innovation is going to be very central to this journey.
So straddling the two roles of Swadeshi Robin Hood and a globally relevant, extremely profitable company.
Yes, very true. Very well said as well.
So again, going back to your days when you actually started taking the mantle of leading Cipla, around that time, people were asking the question from Dr. Reddy's to Cipla, and Cipla was actually not in a great state of health at that time. Leaving Dr. Reddy's itself was kind of a surprise to many people because it was a cherished organization. It still is. From that time to now, a decade, in between we also saw some tremors of sales speculation. How do you characterize your journey?
First thing I'd say, it's been fun. And, what an opportunity to try and shape something that could stay for years, right? And be part of a journey like that. The second point that I would say is I've just been very fortunate that I've had the privilege of working at Dr. Reddy's and at Cipla. And culturally, the two organizations are kind of alike, right? Their purpose is a very strong part of what they do. And I think when I was working with Dr. Reddy's, I remember a conversation with Dr. Anji Reddy. He was inaugurating a site in England, in Cambridge. And there came a point where we said, who will inaugurate this site? And Dr. Reddy said, it will be done by my friend Yusuf, right? And Dr. Hamid actually came I was still in Dr. Reddy's at that time. Dr. Hamid came to inaugurate that site. And I think that is how similar the two organizations are. And I think it's been just very, very exhilarating to be part of this journey in both these organizations together.
Right. So when you started the overhaul of the organization, which was actually kind of not giving you the right focus, and we saw some of the articles actually saying, where is Cipla headed? It's probably not having any direction. Following which you actually took some very daunting steps of dismantling some presence in some of the countries, moving out of biosimilars, which you are again coming back. And at one place you had mentioned that out of 10, maybe 4 decisions may go wrong. How do you actually want to sum that up? Which are the 4 ones that you think probably could have gone wrong? And how do you want to take it ahead from there?
So, I think we're cognizant of the fact that 3 or 4 of our decisions have not played out the way we wanted to. The first is creating an innovation spec business in the US. We wanted to do that probably faster than we have. We picked up a couple of assets. Unfortunately, they bombed on us. Tramadol was one of them.
Yes.
Right. And so we couldn't really build that business. We have a pipeline now. We've learned a lot. Hopefully, at some point in the future, that's going to be an area of focus for the company. The second, when we made the decision on biosimilars, it's very interesting. We always knew we're going to come back to this decision many years later when we can afford it. We've made that shift and we've come back into biosimilars. We've got our own JV now.
Right.
That's the second decision. And the third is really moving up the innovation curve. We thought we could move on that more significantly than perhaps what we have done.
And what would those be? I mean, which are the ones that you would like to focus on?
So some things that we have done, for example, we've taken an interest and a stake in a company in Europe that does mRNA.
Right.
We are working with several organizations on projects in the area of biosims, in the area of biobetters. We have a stem cell venture in India with the Pi Group and with a partner, Chemwell. That's kind of matured, come to a level, so we understand that part of the science. But we are really interested in being able to bring antibody drug conjugates. Like this morning, there was this article about Enhertu, right? A product which is an ADC, which is done incredibly well.
Yes.
We believe that is one part of innovation we would love to take on. We believe the whole area of long-acting injectables and what can come from that is an area we'd love to focus on. We have a set of pipeline drugs in oligonucleotides. We're going to continue to move those further. And then we're also looking at, very intently, we're looking at repurposing a lot of medicines through the 505(b)(2) route in the US. So there are lots of happening in the innovation side. Meanwhile, we've launched 2 new drugs, or we've launched one and close to launching another one in the area of modified but unique medicines. So we've got inhaled insulin and then we've got inhaled itraconazole. And the purpose is very similar. It is that we don't just treat the lung as an area that needs treatment, but also as a wonderful depository of medicines that can help in smaller doses that can help propagation through your body.
On that, you've also spoken about a significant opportunity in diabetes and obesity drugs. In fact, at one point, you also said that you're very open to marketing Eli Lilly's blockbuster drug in that segment. Where are you on those plans now?
So we will have a diabetes portfolio. We already have, but on obesity, we are sure that that's going to be an area that we like. Because, if you're obese, chances are you will be diabetic. Chances are you will have lung disorders. Chances are you will have sleep apnea. And chances are that you will have a cardiac condition. So treating obesity and weight is a very important part of what we want to do. Let's come to a pipeline of drugs that we have for obesity. In the GLP-1s, I think we will be among the first wave launchers. We will try to de-risk our programs. We will not only have our own program, but we are also at the point where we're saying we can't miss day one. So we also must get a partnered program for ourselves. So between the two, we will definitely either be launching both or launching one but we will be on day one. With specific pharma partnerships, as you know, we sell the largest range of diabetic drugs. In fact, we have a very strong partnership with Eli Lilly. And if there ever comes an opportunity that, we can sell, or they request us to partner with them and we request that they accept, how we partner with them on selling some of their anti-obesity medicines, we'd be very happy to do that.
But a lot of our viewers would also want to know, there is another societal sort of an aspect to weight loss drugs across the world. The champions like Elon Musk and, Oprah Winfrey, but there have also been critiques as to, the impact that it could have on mental health, etc., when you become too dependent on it.
Right.
So our viewers would be really interested to know, from a pharma veteran, where are you on that side of the debate?
So obviously, as a pharma veteran, I'm going to say, look, take what makes you better, right? But let me answer this question as a human. And the best way to answer that would be to say, if I need an intervention to come to a steady state, right, let me make that intervention. If it is about a perpetual use of that drug, then maybe, I want to be more informed on how I use it. So too much of anything is bad, whether it's weight, whether it's drugs to control weight, whether it's right. So I want to come back to my healthy lifestyle, right, which may or may not necessitate a drug. But if I need to use a drug to come to that baseline, maybe it's the right thing to do. Because the risk here of not doing it is actually complicating many other conditions, cardiology, sleep apnea, obesity, diabetes. So I want to use that initial twang, come to a baseline, and then try and modulate my life through that baseline with other healthy stuff. That's where I stand on.
That's really well put.
Right. So basically, having said that, there is also a counter debate to this whole big blockbuster GLP-1, the entire wave that's happening. Prominently speaking against those is Vas Narasimhan, who's actually said there is a inherent issue of muscle loss in addition to weight loss, and that's not a good thing to do. And also there is a question of when do you really stop it? It's continuous, and the fear of weight gain comes back the moment you stop it, within a couple of weeks. So there are these ethical issues also that come into the picture. In the US, it's become a rage now. Everyone is actually going for it, even in a compounding way or all sorts of misuse. Where do you think are those ethical boundaries?
Well, the way I would make a choice in this is, we are taking several medicines that sometimes people use lifelong, right? And also keep getting questioned time and again, right? So there was always this thing about, let's say, statins also cause muscle weakness, right? But to people who need to take them, they will be taking them, right? Now, the question is, if your cholesterol comes down to a certain level, can you maintain a healthy lifestyle to deal with it? I think that's the right thing to do. I feel the same about obesity. I think it's a debate that has probably happened many times in the industry before. I'm on the side of the debate which says if you need an intervention, do it, right? But if you need to perpetually take it, right, are there more healthy ways in which you can get to that? And if not, then obviously you have to take it.
Right. So on the journey, on the innovation side, you spoke about bispecific antibodies and ADCs. Chinese companies have actually taken a leap there, and even some of the Indian companies have done deals with them. Of course, the big pharma is actually relying on them a lot nowadays, what we see. We've lost the innovation buzz. How do you think that can be recouped now?
I think it's quite phenomenal what China's done. In as much as we think about the fact that we may have missed the innovation buzz, etc., it's quite phenomenal that they've been able to create this. A couple of things that I think, firstly, the battle's not lost.
Okay.
Today's biotech could be tomorrow's something else, right? And so the question is, how quickly do you move on that bandwagon, and how do you, assimilate the list of people? But I think there's a fundamental issue with most innovation. And that issue is who's going to pay for it. You see, in China, what happens is that the government pays for a lot of healthcare, right? And it's a well-funded government. And innovation, eventually people need to charge for innovation, right? So if you've discovered the best drug and you want it to sell in your market, there has to be a market that can pay for it, right? So that is the first thing, just solving the triangle of who's going to pay for it. The second is to just basically create an ecosystem where scientists love to come and work. Today, those ecosystems exist. There is a corridor in Shanghai. There is a corridor in where these ecosystems of people who are coming back from San Francisco, they come back and they develop an affinity to work with their colleagues in places like that. I think we have some hubs going in India, by the way. They're great hubs. Bangalore is one hub. I can see Pune as emerging as another hub. I think deepening this is very important as we go forward. So I would just say these two things. And I don't think the buzz on innovation is ever lost.
Right. So with that backdrop, how do you see the next 10 years for Cipla, or maybe 15 years of Cipla? Because, questions keep coming on where is Cipla headed? And again, you have these, things coming up every couple of years. Cipla is on sale. How do you want to kind of put that in perspective?
Well, I've had the privilege of last 2 to 3 years answering a lot of those questions, right? But let me start by saying the following. I think the heart and soul of Cipla is the 27,000 people who work here and their families, right? And this is a wonderful organization that will continue to exist. It's not going anywhere, right? And lately, the promoters have also said that they're deeply committed to making sure that the organization continues to foster. So those people are not going anywhere. They're here in this organization, they're working for it, and we've nicely buttressed it, right? Today, we are a lender of talent to the industry, right? Several people leave us, they go into different roles, right? We'd love to continue to see that as a positioning. We're the first company to be called whenever there's a partnering opportunity by a multinational today. This is also a change. We're the first company to be called whenever there is a major crisis. When there was COVID, we were the largest manufacturers of remdesivir, right? So those things stay the same. What we want to be known as going forward is the best innovators. We are far from that goal today, right? But we want to be known as a company that brings its own innovative medicines into the market, not just for India, not just for Africa, right? But we want to be known as that company that can move this innovation curve across the world. And if you really ask me in 10 years, I hope that Cipla can get 20% of its revenues through products that they have developed or licensed or partnered from their own labs. That will be the coming of Cipla, right? And that's where I think our journey is.
That's a significant structural shift.
It is. It is a very big structural shift. So one of the words that we're adopting within Cipla, interestingly and increasingly, is pioneering, right? Coming out with a therapy for HIV was pioneering because nobody else did it, right? Doing something in respiratory is pioneering. Can we come out with a new class of medicines that cure people, that make people live healthier? That's pioneering, right? And even in wellness, we think that the next player who's going to be the biggest wellness player is going to be a pharma company.
Wow.
Right? We don't think this belongs to an FMCG company because the root of this wellness is very often through chemists that pharma companies know how to reach. The root of this wellness is out of medicines that are going to come out of categories in pain, out of categories in nutrition, out of categories which require science, right? And therefore we think that, and with all due respect to everyone, that perhaps the next Unilever of consumer wellness will be a pharma company, right?
Speaking of words that are, beginning to be part of your, the company vocabulary, I'll just cite something from your latest annual report. Cipla has started experimenting with this technology being AI, primarily in the areas of customer engagement and operations. Starting next quarter, company anticipates AI embedded initiatives across the organization. You're known to be very tech savvy. Do you see AI being embedded in pharma DNA largely going forward, and also Cipla's story?
100%. And we've already embedded AI into our operations. We're doing a lot of data analyzing, a lot of programming, a lot of nudges and work in our operations, in our field force. We have 10,000 people who work in operations, 10,000 people who work in the field. All of them are being supported by AI, right? We've got AI in our processes, in our systems. We're beginning to introduce AI in preferences in product design, right? In optimizing spends. Now, these are very small experiments. We don't know which one's going to succeed, right? But unless you try, you'll never know.
Right. But what about AI in drug development, which is something, say, Adar Poonawala spoke to us about, and how they're sort of, really trying. But that is a whole new sort of gamut of
Absolutely.
rules, etc.
So it's not just a tool that can optimize, it's a tool that can give you hits across categories of diseases. It's a tool that can tell you that the combination of these three conditions and this type of a structural drug can yield you the maximum amount of hits is very exciting. I must tell you a small story about the JP Morgan conference. And I think it was one of the persons and one of the large pharma speakers. And basically what she said, research heads, she said, we've come to know, or we've come to accept the fact that over 60% of innovation is not going to happen in our labs. Very profound statement. we've come to accept the fact, right? This is the second thing she said. We've come to accept the fact that 11 people can discover a blockbuster drug. That you don't need big R&D setups, right? And they can do so while using AI and while using really proprietary tools that they've developed. Again, not big pharma, right? I just think this whole world of AI is giving birth to super innovators who are actually existing outside of the universe of the big pharma that we typically know. Now, imagine a setup just around this, right? Of 11, 15, 30 people shops, which are basically coming and pitching to every company saying, hey, we have this as a synopsis. Would you be interested? Right? And what does it do to the cost of discovery? It brings the cost of discovery, slashes it by almost 30%. What does it do in terms of time to discovery? It's slashing a typical cycle of 12 to 15 years by almost 4 to 5 years. That is significant.
Right.
So I completely agree. I mean, if Adar has said this, I think it's with good reason. I think AI can dramatically change. And the other thing is AI can move India into this orbit a lot faster, right? Just like it's done with China, just like it's doing with the US today.
Right. So back on the Indian market, I mean, Cipla has a huge reputation, doesn't even need to be told. It's a formidable brand. But the rankings changed. Sun became big. Abbott picked up Piramal. Cipla was in third, kept that rank for a very long time. Now, sometimes we see mankind moving up the ladder. What's the balance? Because we know you've also spoken 10 years ago about the massive influx of generics, and there will be several thousands of those brands. How do you retain that value versus volume proposition? It's going to become very complex.
No, 100%. And look at, if you were to just look at, firstly, I think, obviously, we have deep respect for all 4 companies that you spoke about, right? I think each one of them has done a marvelous job. But let me take a step here, right? I think Cipla has been wanting to aggregate its position in the India market. The economics of India and the inflection point that India is in today, I think we're sitting on a wave of continued growth for healthcare, right? I actually think I see this market doubling, tripling in the next 10 to 15 years, right? I think penetration is going to improve. So I think the conditions are just right for India. Now, there are 2 paths. I think the first path is acceleration. Acceleration can come from M&A. We're always there. And certainly, whenever we have a conversation internally, we're always looking at this saying somebody else, right, has got ahead of us because they acquired a company, right? We feel bad about it. Oh, somebody else moved ahead. But we stay true to the fact that, hey, there is enough volume growth, right, that can get us continued growth. Now, will Cipla be an acquirer in India? For sure. For sure. And if we get something that meets our thing, we'd love to gain ranks. We'd love to move ahead. And so in this market, which is a home market, which has got a huge amount of volume growth that's coming, Cipla will always be an acquirer. But I'm not going to feel too much better if I acquire the next company and I become number 2. I still have that business to run, and I still have that business to keep growing faster than market. So internally, we've said acquisitions will come, we will acquire, right? We are acquirers, but you have to beat market every year. And that is what we are trying to move within Cipla. Keep beating market, right? There are periods and quarters where we can't do it, right? Yeah. But what is the quest to keep beating market growth? And when an opportunity arises, we will buy 100%.
If I can open up the discussion a little bit in just 2 final points on the huge upheaval that we are seeing on the geopolitical front, especially in the US. We have a new president who has some radical views about how he wants his participation or US's participation in the pharma sector as a whole. We've seen him pulling out of the WHO. There is news about layoffs in the FDA, in the CDC. There are apprehensions that this will slow down drug approvals quite a bit in the short term and have even bigger impacts in the long term. How do you see this?
Actually, I don't know too much of what is being cut and in which departments. All we hear about it is really, the quantum, the level of people, etc. I think if we were to just step back for a minute, I don't believe that cutting of departments impacts efficiency negatively.
Sure.
Right? First of all, I think as an initiative, nobody could imagine that a government can become more efficient, right? I mean, if you really look at it, and that's what President Trump is after, making the government look a lot more efficient than it historically is. This may come by realizing that we need to cut resources. It may come by realizing that we need to cut resources in one area to put more resources in another to speed up things. I'm not sure at this point in time that we're hearing that inspections in India will go down because people are being cut, or that drug approvals will go back. Well, we'll have to watch this. The industry does pay a GADUFA fee just for these purposes, right? And I think that structure is still intact with the current government. So I don't think approvals slow down, because I look at it the other way. If they slow down in the US and they're moving at a much faster pace in Europe or in Japan, that's going to be a bigger furor, right? So I don't think they're going to actually slow down. I think they'll move at the same pace, perhaps with a lesser proclaimed government expenditure on them.
Right.
Final question from my side. You're known to be a follower and a proponent of the Bhagavad Gita. Just wanted to understand, how does the treatise still help or guide your business decisions?
I think the Bhagavad Gita says straight to your purpose, right? Talk about, you have a karma, you have a reason why you exist. You may be faced with whatever challenges that you have. But on that day, at that moment, you were sent with a certain thing to do. And there is a certain North Star that guides you. And that's what I believe in, right? That North Star, you just stay true to what you're doing. I think I have a Gita in my room. It was actually gifted to me at a time when I badly needed it. And today it's there. I don't actually read it every day. At times when I'm standing and taking a call, I see it, and at times I look at it because I have read it earlier. But there are lots of people who walk into my room, they see the Gita, they read a couple of pages, it gets turned, and then when I come back the next day, I realize somebody else read it, right? So knowledge, and as we say in India,
open source.
It's open source, right? And what a beautiful thing to have as open source, right? Anybody can gain from it and benefit. It's just lovely. And that's, in many ways, that is what we do at Cipla, right? We try to make this world healthier. We try to imagine that everyone in this world is not a patient. It is somebody's father, mother, brother, and all of them can gain from what we do.
If I can add one more. So you're a bond of two legends in the industry. Dr. Anji Reddy, you had a steep climb there. You did what you did in the last 10 years for Cipla. When you hand over Cipla, what would be the key words that you will tell to your successor?
When I hand over Cipla, I think there's a when aspect in it. So let me say, I think the most important thing that I would love to say is continue to make the impact, right, that this organization has had and is looked up to by generations of people who've used our product. Have fun while doing that, right? And just stay true to making sure that 30,000 people or whoever work for you believe and love to come to work every day. That is also what Dr. Hamid told me when I started in some form, right? That the company was for the patients.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Quarters will come, quarters will go. Don't worry about them.
Yes.
And don't do anything stupid that I have to sell the company.
He did
Right?
say that.
So
yes.
that's it. Those are the three things he told me. And whenever there is a transition, this is exactly what would be messages to the new person.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Umang, for taking all our questions. It's great to talk to you. World view, India view, where India is headed, where Cipla is headed, and your talk about Gita. Extremely encouraging and inspiring. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Vikas. For a pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for today. This episode was produced by me and Vinay Joshi, sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee. Do like, share, and subscribe to The Morning Brief, a new episode of which drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Thank you, and have a good week.